Hey strangers, welcome to episode 13 of the Strange Sessions. I'm Krista, and with me is someone who's not exactly a stranger.
No, I am not. I am Kurt.
Hi, Kurt.
Hi, Krista.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
So what's new?
Not much.
No?
Not really.
No?
I've been sick all week.
Oh, that sucks.
That does suck.
Weekend is upon us, though.
The weekend is upon. I'm
And
off
Halloween.
Saturday. I'm off
nice.
Saturday.
Very
I work
nice.
Halloween, so
Oh, that sucks.
yeah, that does suck. But
It is right around the corner, though.
I've never been a big Halloween fan.
Really?
Nope.
Oh, I love it.
Even when I was a kid, I wasn't.
I loved it. I couldn't get enough of it.
I just
I have
remember
so many good memories.
the neighbors that lived next door to us always gave us pennies. I just remember that.
That's weird. Just like a bag of coins or something.
Just like a handful, like 5 pennies. That's like the people that give out a
and
toothbrush.
Toilet
like,
papered
thanks.
their house like real hard.
No.
Popcorn balls. I always hated that too. Give me some chocolate.
I like
I
popcorn
want
balls.
chocolate. If you know the people, I guess that's okay.
Yeah, you never know if there's going to be a razor blade jammed in there.
Exactly.
But no, I've never been a Halloween guy. I love Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why. I think it's just such a low-key holiday.
It's also sort of a non-holiday now, too, that the stores just skip right from Halloween to Christmas.
Yep.
Although I heard Target I just saw on the news, Target is holding off on their Christmas decorations until after Thanksgiving.
Good.
I can't believe it.
Good.
Everybody should do that.
Yeah, they should.
Halloween should be lasting right up until Christmas. But
I know, but you're a big Halloween buff.
Thanksgiving and Halloween are both fall to me, so.
And now it's actually like fall outside. It was 75 degrees like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and now it's in the 40s.
Yeah.
Welcome to Wisconsin.
I saw the thermostat outside the studio here said 57, so
Nice.
It is chilly in the school.
It is. It's kind of overcast and dark outside. It's very, very good atmosphere for recording the Strange Session.
We're going to do another little mini investigation after this episode.
Yeah. I know we've been talking about this for a few weeks, and I just asked Kurt today, do you think we've gotten anything on the audio that's worth sharing? And I feel like if I need to ask you that, the answer is no.
Yeah, I think Joe got a couple good things, but like we said, I heard it playing on his computer, so I didn't really get to hear it, but it sounded like Joe caught a couple decent things, but
we'll revisit it.
Yeah, nothing that like really stands out so far. Just a lot of like weird whispery sounds and weird noises.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to, share anything with the world unless I know it's, something.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have any shout outs?
I want to give a shout out to my good friend Sherry Bauer that I work with. She was on a different shift and now she just moved back to the weekend shift with me. But 2 weeks ago, this upcoming Saturday, I was at work and I'm a klutz and I walked into something. I walked into a machine, I think, and I got 2 long scratches on my arm.
Oh boy.
So I was sitting at the lunch table and Sherry was sitting next to me and she looked at my arm and she said, "A ghost didn't do that again, did it?" And I said, "No." And I said, "How do you know about that?" And she said, "I listen to your podcast."
That's so
yeah,
awesome.
It's so cool. I didn't know that she listened to the podcast.
That's
so
cool.
I guess I just always assume the only people that listen to the podcast are the people that actually
comment on it.
Talk to me about it. So it was just really cool that she listened to the podcast, and I really appreciate it. So thank you, Sherry. Thank you for listening. And no, it wasn't a ghost. I was a klutz and walked into a machine.
I also have a Sherry shout out.
Sherry shout out.
Sherry Myers, who I work with. I just we were talking about the podcast today, and she said that she heard on 6:20 a.m., which is a local AM station in Wisconsin, that Wisconsin is the most haunted state in the U.S. And I was like, A, shouldn't I have known that? And B, can't anyone say that about their state? Because you can't prove it.
We do have a lot of haunted areas, but I think every state has...
Yeah. An old sanitarium or a hotel or whatever. I don't know. Maybe we just have more per capita. I don't know. I'll take it.
I'll take it too.
We'll have more
places for us. We could do a road edition of the podcast.
More content. Do we have any housekeeping?
Oh, I also want to give a shout out to Eric Orheim.
Oh yeah, Eric Orheim.
Good friend of mine. He just posted like right before we started this in our Strangers Facebook group that school video, that supposedly paranormal
with
video,
the locker door
with the locker door opening with the wet floor sign flying across the room, that it was debunked. And
as a hoax?
Yeah, because if you look at where the school's cameras are, their camera is in a different area than would have filmed that. So they think it was on somebody's tripod when they filmed it. Oh. And also, they have clips on there that if you slow it down, like when the wet floor sign goes flying out.
That looked weird.
the pattern on the floor, the tiles disappears.
Oh, there you go.
So that sign of editing,
Yep.
and one of the locker doors disappears for a second before the stuff comes flying out.
Oh, sure.
So that's all editing. But I just think it's so, I don't know.
People run wild with it.
Because the school claims that it wasn't hoaxed, but apparently it was. So I think that's just kind of crappy.
Well, how would maybe the school had the wool pulled over their eyes
Unless
too.
the school didn't know either. But right now, these days
bummer.
it's so hard to take any paranormal video seriously.
Have you followed up at all on that guy who was on Twitter?
No, I was going to do that today, and I didn't get a chance to do that.
Okay. We'll revisit that.
Yeah, probably in our next episode.
Okay.
I want to say that this is our last themed episode for the season.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 more episodes after this, and my good friend and the always awesome Sophie Ray suggested that we do an episode, the best of 2017, where we talk about like the weird stories.
Yeah, that'd be
And
awesome.
We'll do that, I figured, next time.
Okay.
And I'd also like to do like we did on Paranormal Palaver, where we go back over our episodes and just talk about what we thought about each. Yeah, quick recap of each of them. And then our 15th episode, the last one for this season, will be our viewers or listener submission.
We need more stories, guys.
Yeah.
Although I think
I figure
Brittany
I'll
shared
start-
one on the Paranormal Palaver, another old school media podcast. I think that she said we could share it on either podcast.
Oh, cool.
Though. So we'll save it for
we got that
streaming
one from
sessions.
Sophie. We got the one from Sarah. So we do have a couple of them, but
we need more.
I'll start really hitting people up in the next week or 2. So we'll get some.
Sounds good.
Otherwise, we'll just make stuff up.
Yeah, totally. Like Wisconsin's the most haunted state in the U.S.
We'll just make up stuff that they can't.
Anything else? Should we talk about Maura Murray?
Yeah. I know a lot of people were really unhappy with the last episode.
Of the missing, what is it called? The disappearance of Maura Murray. A
lot of people were complaining that the episodes never focused on the police involvement. Mm-hmm. And now that they had one, people are even more annoyed because everybody thinks
it's like totally cleared them.
Yeah, that they brushed it completely under the rug, that it's not even an issue anymore.
It doesn't matter to me that their stories jibed with each other. They're cops.
Yeah.
They know how to do that.
Yeah.
They probably just got together beforehand and said, okay, this is what we're going to say happened, and act like you're telling the truth.
Cecil Smith said he was supposedly driving the 001 SUV. But when they go back to that night, the dispatch called her back several times, I guess, to ask her, are you sure it was 001? Because the word was that 001 was out of commission, that wasn't even being used that day. And now all of a sudden he was using it. Mm-hmm. So something just doesn't add up. I mean, I kind of felt bad for him because so many people said that he was coming across as nervous and twitchy and stuff like that. And
we're not talking about the
Cecil
chief.
Smith.
The sheriff or the chief? No, the guy the deputy who was driving.
Cecil Smith was the one that came across kind of, but he might have been nervous. And somebody said he has, he's starting to get dementia and all that stuff. So, I think people are just reading too much into that. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the Maura's other sister that everybody said came across.
She did. Part of that is editing.
But everybody comes across differently in...
Yeah, but part of that's editing. They kept zooming in on her when she'd freeze and look off into the distance and not say anything.
Well, yeah. I just felt bad that so many people were saying stuff.
Was it you who said that she might have been more comfortable if she weren't in a dingy hotel room?
In a dingy hotel room with cameras kind of around her, people in the other room monitoring her.
Restaurant nearby?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think the final episode is the one.
There's 6 total?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because this one ended with the paint chips, with them finding out that the paint chips they got from that closet had blood on them. So
no, it wasn't human blood. It was just blood at this point.
I don't think it's going to... I think if it was Maura's, we would have heard by now. Something concrete would have came out.
It's weird that they haven't tested anything until now, though.
Yeah. So I'm just curious.
I thought the part with the search dogs was really interesting, though.
Yeah, but the fact that they used the gloves that she had barely worn could affect the dogs searching.
But they found that frozen body part. Wasn't it a half a mile away?
Yeah, the cadaver dog.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that was.
So I don't know.
I'm starting to kind of believe what I'm thinking that they're going towards is that she was picked up and murdered.
Yeah.
Which sucks because I do want her to be alive.
Yeah. Her family seems pretty convinced, too, that she wouldn't be out there all this time and not making contact. It doesn't make any sense.
I totally... changed my mind on that with her mom being sick and all that.
Yeah. And people pointed out, I think in this last episode, nothing all that earth-shattering happened.
No.
It wasn't that, nothing was that big of a deal.
I've had worse stuff happen, and I didn't run to Canada and start a new life.
Yeah.
Although it doesn't sound bad sometimes.
I'd like to visit Canada, but that's about it. So, awkward pause.
Nothing else?
Time is passing. No, I don't think so. I thought I'd also do a shout out to a podcast that I'm really into right now called Spooked. I don't think I've mentioned this before, but it's really good. Brittany Zahn recommended it to me, and it's basically, sometimes it's the people who the stories happen to are actually telling the story themselves. Occasionally, I don't know if it's the host or the narrator. He will narrate the story, and I don't know if those are true stories or if those are sort of just added for dramatic effect or whatever. But it's really, really well done, really well produced. The music is really good. The stories are really good. And if you tune in now, you can just binge on a whole bunch of episodes because they've been posting every week leading up to Halloween.
Nice.
So
I'm going to have to check that out. My speakers are shot in my car. Something is wrong with them. So if I play any music or anything
Did you just buy that thing?
Yeah.
Was it brand new?
I have horrible luck with cars.
Wow.
But if I play anything that has bass, like music, it sounds horrible. So I've been listening to nothing but podcasts lately.
Oh.
And you know how I am. I go through like weird binges where I'm like fascinated by something and listen to nothing but that. Like I did a couple months back with Cold War espionage and spying.
Oh.
I couldn't get enough of that. And right now, my big thing is survival and prepping.
Oh.
I'm not a doomsday prepper.
No, but I find that stuff super fascinating too.
I'm not by any stretch a doomsday prepper, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a bug out bag at home with stuff.
We've talked about it, but we've never actually put the bug out bag together.
Yeah, I got a bag together. I have a lot of like shelf stable foods in my closet that I could live off of if I have to. Which I probably shouldn't be saying because now everybody's going to come and attack me and take my food.
I always want to get that freeze-dried food, too, that you can buy at, like, Fleet Farm and Fleet, depending on where you live.
But no, I like Spam as it is. So I have Spam in there because that stuff lasts forever, for whatever's, because I feel like things right now are not too stable.
No, they're not. No. North Korea, man. Watch out.
There's a part of me that, even though this sounds dumb, there's a part of me that likes the idea of a EMP bomb.
Yeah.
Shutting off all the power and everything.
My husband and I have talked about that.
Yeah, for a couple weeks, you would have people getting to know their neighbors again. You would have people communicating again.
Unfortunately, I'm not sure that's how it would go.
No.
Mass panic would set in. Yeah. People would be murdering each other and looting and stealing food. And
Yep, it would be like The Walking Dead without the zombies.
Exactly. I just read an article about whether or not it's likely that North Korea has the capability to do an EMP above the U.S., and it sounds unlikely, but who knows what's going on over there? We don't know what they're doing.
No.
So
I got a little kit put together, and we'll see what happens.
Bug out bag.
The Walking Dead just started up again, and I watched the first episode, and I seriously think I spent more time dicking around on my phone than actually watching the episode. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I'm just not as excited about the show as I used to be. I don't know if it's the storyline. I don't know what it is. I'm just not as into it.
I'm that way about this season of American Horror Story. I think I have 3 DVR'd, and I'm just like, I should probably watch those, but I don't know. It's not that it's not a good show. I think I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts too. Dirty John, if you haven't listened to that, it is so good.
I don't do a lot of the true crime stuff. I do a lot of
is another really good one too.
I think I brought this up in the last one, but the Sofa King podcast. I'm huge into that one. I just listened. They actually had one of their earlier episodes is about the cosmos and alien abductions. And it was actually a really good episode. Nice. So I think we'll steal that topic for next season of our show.
Nice. Cool.
But after our next 2 episodes, we'll be taking a break until sometime next spring.
Yeah.
Early next spring, late winter.
Early spring.
Yeah.
January.
Yeah.
We'll see how long we can stand without, coming to the school.
Yeah, because I look forward to doing this.
Yeah, me too.
I really do.
I hope people look forward to listening to it.
I think they do. We get lots of nice comments on our...
We do. People seem to be enjoying it.
And every now and then, every couple days, there's still somebody that subscribes to it, or I see our Strange Sessions page has a couple new views.
Yeah, it's cool. I dig it.
Awesome.
Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, thank you for listening and putting up with us.
Yeah, we appreciate that. So what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about the Grinning Man / Indrid Cold / the Smiling Man.
The Grinning Man just sounds creepy.
Yeah. Actually, the Smiling Man is the creepiest out of all these.
Really?
We'll save that one for last. The Grinning Man, I've heard bits and pieces about this over the years, but I didn't really hear a lot about it until the Thinking Sideways podcast. And I always remember this one because when I listened to this one, it was fall. I was out on my trail in the woods, and it was a really foggy day. Like one of those foggy days where you can see the fog in front of you swirling around and stuff. And it takes a lot to creep me out, especially with a podcast, but I was legitimately creeped out in the woods listening to this podcast.
By yourself.
Yeah. So I'll always remember the podcast because of that. So the story of the Grinning Man, like I said, this is kind of split into 3 different things. People don't know if it's the same thing, if 2 of them are the same thing, if none of them are the same thing. But I just lumped them all into this
Sesame
episode.
Street song coming on.
So they're all kind of lumped into this episode.
Okay.
But first, we're going to discuss the Grinning Man.
Okay. I'm ready.
Ready?
Yep.
Listeners ready? Go to the bathroom if you have to.
Grab your coffee.
Grab your coffee.
Your blankie.
Your blankie.
It's going to get creepy in
I was
here.
going to say something dirty, but I didn't.
Go for it.
I do have my lucky podcasting underwear on again. Thank you for the picture you made, Jamie, that,
that was
made
awesome.
us laugh.
That was great.
I've washed them since the last time I wore them, by the way.
That was 2 weeks ago. Go on.
The story of the Grinning Man begins in 1966. At approximately 9:45 p.m. on the night of October 11th, 1966, in Elizabeth, New Jersey, 2 16-year-old boys were walking home. The boys were Martin Mouse Munov and James Jimmy Yonkaitis.
They sound like the mob in waiting.
Yeah, like Goodfellas.
Exactly.
Yeah, Mouse and Jimmy. Those were their nicknames.
All right. Up to no good.
16-year-old boys. I don't know. It's 1966. I don't know.
Yeah, they were probably on the way to get a malt.
They
Go
might
on.
They might have been injecting the pot or whatever they did back in those days.
Injecting the pot.
So, yeah, Martin Mouse Munov and James Jimmy Yonkaitis were walking home that night when they turned onto a road that ran adjacent to the elevated New Jersey Turnpike. They had been discussing the reports that a local woman that night had been chased by a tall green man earlier that evening.
Green?
Green.
Okay.
There was a treacherously steep 30-foot slant running from the turnpike above them all the way down to the tall wire fence that ran parallel to the route the boys were walking on. The decline on the other side of the fence was so steep that the boys had never seen anyone attempt to scale it, nor had they ever seen anyone on the opposite side of the fence. Yonkaitis turned to look at his friend and noticed a humanoid figure standing in the thick scrub brush on the opposite side of the fence. He appeared to be ignoring the boys and staring at a house across the road. Yonkaitis quickly pointed out the figure to his friend. Munov slowly turned and saw a huge figure clad in a green one-piece suit that seemed to be reflecting the streetlight above. Munov's account in his report to the police said, "Jimmy nudged me and said, 'Who's that guy standing behind you?' I looked around and there he was behind the fence, just standing there. He turned around and looked right at us, then he grinned a big old grin." The 2 friends watched him, and he sat there grinning at the boys, not moving. In some accounts that I read, the boys started walking away, and he started walking on the other side of the fence, keeping up with them, just staring at them and smiling the whole time. The boys ran from the scene, ran to the police department, and notified the police what they had seen. The boys also said that he had a very dark complexion and little round eyes, real beady, set far apart, and that they could not remember seeing any hair, ears, or nose on this figure. They just kept saying his grin seemed
Too wide
like
or
a
something?
shark kind of grin, like a really wide grin.
Yeah.
And he just sat there, stared at them the whole time, grinning. 3 days later, paranormal investigator and journalist John Keel arrived to interview the boys. John Keel was there in the area because of the UFOs, and you know what John Keel was mainly involved with? Mothman.
Oh.
This was the same area that the Mothman was sighted.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
The boys took Keel to the area where the being was sighted. Keel wondered if it was possibly a stranded motorist, but quickly concluded that the incline was too sharp for anybody to walk on, especially at night. The story began to make its way around town, and then people in town began to wonder if it was related to another event that happened the same night. At around the same time, the boys witnessed the creature 40 miles north of the town of Elizabeth. An off-duty police officer and his wife witnessed what they described as a blazing white light as big as a car soar through the sky above their heads, almost hit a 600-foot tall television tower, and then vanish over the nearby hills at a slow, leisurely pace. On the other side of the hill, patrolman Edward Wester and Sergeant Benjamin Thompson of the Wanakee Reservoir Police witnessed the light soar over the reservoir at a slow speed. Thompson later stated, "The light was brilliantly white. It lit up the whole area for about 300 yards. In fact, it blinded me when I got out of the patrol car to look at it, and I couldn't see for about 20 minutes afterwards."
Wow.
Yeah, so it was.
So it's like a UFO sighting.
Yeah.
And
yep, and this was right around when the Mothman stuff started up.
this is like a close encounter of the third kind.
So when you look up stuff about the Grinning Man, this is usually the first thing that shows up are the accounts of these kids. Like I said, in some accounts I read, he followed them walking along the fence line while they were walking down the road, and in other accounts he just sat there and stared at them until the kids ran.
Either way, it's creepy.
Yeah. So according to John Keel, around this time, he received a mysterious phone call. The caller identified himself as Indrid Cold, I-N-D-R-I-D, last name C-O-L-D, Cold.
A woman?
No, a man.
Okay.
Indrid Cold. Indrid Cold gave him a cryptic and supposedly prophetic message. According to some accounts, this message stated that a power failure was going to happen in the town on the date of December 15th at 1 p.m. No power outage happened, but that is the time that the bridge over the Ohio River collapsed.
Ooh, where the Mothman was sighted.
Where the Mothman was sighted.
Wow.
Further investigation by Keel revealed that many people who saw the Mothman also saw a person they nicknamed the Smiling Man or the Man in Black, but this is disputed. So this is all, the Indrid Cold stuff is all tied into the Mothman stuff. You know, if you look up Indrid Cold on Google, you're going to find a ton of stuff, and it's always tied into the Mothman case. I didn't bring it up in the Mothman episode because I knew this was going to be a separate episode on its own.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard of the Grinning Man, but I'd never heard them, the Mothman and the Grinning Man.
Indrid Cold is kind of an interesting thing. There's so much tied into the Mothman stuff, but a lot of people don't know if it should be. It might have just been a separate incident.
And they got tied together.
That got tied together with it. But as of now, Indrid Cold is kind of tied in with the Mothman.
Okay.
And now we get to Woodrow Derenberger. This is where...
These names are just awesome.
I know. This is where the gist of the Indrid Cold stuff actually comes from.
Okay.
On November 2nd, 1966, less than 1 month after the boys had their encounter, sewing machine salesman Woodrow Derenberger was driving home on Interstate 77 after work when all of a sudden a strange craft seemed to lower from the sky and crash down on the road in front of him. He described the craft, saying it looked like an old-fashioned kerosene lamp chimney flaring at both ends, narrowing down to a small neck, and then enlarging in a great bulge in the center. I mean, I can kind of picture what he's talking about.
I can't.
He said a door appeared to open in the side of the craft and a human-like figure stepped out. Derenberger later described him as a tall, dark-skinned man with slightly elongated eyes and a huge grin. The figure seemed to be wearing blue reflective clothing that he described as quite shiny and had a glistening effect. The craft that Derenberger had seen lifted off the ground and hovered in the sky above them.
What's strange about what's at least sticking out to me is that most depictions or descriptions of aliens, they have like a very small, thin mouth. So this wide grin is something that doesn't...
Yeah, the wide grin is strange.
Yeah.
He says that the whole time this guy, this creature, whatever, was communicating with them telepathically. But the grin was on his face the whole time.
Oh, that's creepy.
Derenberger then claimed that this grinning man telepathically communicated with him, telling him to not be afraid and that it comes from a country much weaker than his. I always thought that was a weird...
A country
much weaker than his. I always thought that was a strange statement.
Yeah, that is strange.
He asked Derenberger his name. Derenberger gave him his name, and then the creature responded with...
That's a weird name.
The creature responded, "My name is Cold. I sleep, breathe, and bleed even as you do." Which is another weird thing to say.
Yeah.
The creature
Cold, though?
The creature went on to reveal his full name was Indrid Cold, And he asked Derenberger questions about the surrounding cities and other topics, questions about humanity. This Indrid Cold said he was studying humanity. He pointed to a distant city and asked what that was, if that's where people sleep. So it was just a weird conversation.
It kind of reminds me of people's accounts with black-eyed kids.
Or Men in Black.
Or Men in Black, yeah.
Yep, and that's going to be one of the things we talk about.
Well, the common thing about the black-eyed kids is that they say really weird things.
So do the Men in Black.
Do the Men in Black? Okay.
I don't have it in my notes here, but around the time of the Mothman, there was a female reporter that she was kind of like the go-to person for stuff about Mothman. Mm-hmm. And she said one day she was in her office and this guy came in wearing a black suit, the sunglasses, a typical Man in Black outfit. Mm-hmm. And he was asking her really weird questions. He got like really close to her, like a personal space thing. Mm-hmm. And she was talking to somebody on the phone, and this guy that was sitting at the desk looked at her pen, and he was like studying the pen like he's never seen it before. And then all of a sudden he burst out laughing, and he took the pen and ran off.
So he could have just escaped from
it was just a weird situation. But the Indrid Cold stuff, a lot of people think that he's something to do with the Men in Black. Interesting. And I'm sure most people know, but if you don't, the Men in Black are people, supposedly, we don't know what they are, that come around after you've witnessed UFOs.
I always assumed they were part of the government.
Yeah, they could be, but they're really weird. I mean, some of their mannerisms and stuff is just like they're not human.
Right.
But they come, if somebody witnesses UFOs, they come and appear threatening or want whatever evidence you have, and they're just really creepy. Yeah.
Well, and there have been sightings after black-eyed kid encounters too.
Yes. Yep. So Derenberger was talking to Indrid Cold. He was answering his questions. And then it ended with Indrid Cold telling Derenberger that they will see him again. And he said that we will see you again.
Who's we?
Don't know.
Okay.
He said, we will see you again. The craft above lowered from the sky. Cold entered it through a hatch, and then it climbed into the sky and vanished. Derenberger went home and reported this to the authorities. The next day, several witnesses corroborated some of the events, saying that they did see two men talking on the interstate and that they did see a strange craft in the sky, which is weird, that there was actually people that saw this. Shortly after this, Derenberger claims he began being followed by black Cadillacs, receiving strange phone calls all day and night, picking up the phone only to hear strange electronic noises, beeping, and hissing on the other line. And that's something that comes up a lot with the Indrid Cold stuff is things with phones.
Okay. That's very Men in Blackish, too.
It is.
The strange phone calls, the black cars.
There's a lot of stuff with phones with Indrid Cold. I don't know. Have you seen the Mothman Prophecies movie? There's the scene where Richard Gere's in, I think, a hotel room, and he gets a call, and the call on the phone is from Indrid Cold. And then he asks him, well, what am I holding in my hand? And I think it was a battery. And Indrid Cold says, you're holding a battery. But the call is just like really weird and distorted, and that's kind of what is associated with Indrid Cold is this phone call stuff.
Okay.
So Derenberger ended up losing some credibility. He claimed later that Cold came back several times and that he traveled on board a black Volkswagen with him to his home planet, Lanulos.
Wait.
Yeah. He claimed that.
A Volkswagen?
In a black Volkswagen.
Okay.
He was also...
Apparently Volkswagen's keeping more secrets than just their diesel emissions.
Yep. He traveled with him on board a black Volkswagen to his planet Lanulos in the galaxy of, I think it's Ganymedes or Ganymedes. And he said on his home planet Lanulos, inhabitants walked around almost naked, dressed in tiny colored shorts, and drank decaf coffee.
Now he's losing some credibility in my book.
Yeah.
Because, who would drink decaf?
Both he and his wife claim that other grinning men with names like Demo Hassan and Carl Ardo also visited them over the years. His wife claimed that they weren't aliens and that the grinning men were time travelers. Derenberger and his wife eventually divorced. And this is good here.
You're already smiling. This is going to be good.
He later announced that he was pregnant with Cold's child, and they were leaving together to live in Brazil. He was pregnant with Cold's child that was supposedly going to guide the human race.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Why not?
That they were leaving together to live in Brazil.
Brazil.
Yep.
That's great.
So, it's a love story. It's cute.
Yeah. They lived happily ever after.
I actually didn't even know this existed until like right before I left to come here, but his daughter, Tanya Derenberger, just recently released a book called Beyond Lanulose, Our 50 Years with Indrid Cold. She released it December of last year, actually.
Is this the daughter he gave birth to?
Yes. This is the daughter he gave birth to, not their love child or whatever. But this is
he physically.
No, this is his daughter, his and his wife. This is him and his wife, not him and Indrid.
Like, you just blew my mind. No.
This is him and his the real child of him and his wife is Tanya Derenberger. And she wrote a book last December called Beyond Lanulose, Our 50 Years with Indrid Cold. She claims that he made up that last part about the baby and all that stuff because he was getting tired of all the attention and wanted people to believe that he moved away.
Okay. Why did you have to say you were pregnant, though?
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people theorize that he really did see something that night on the interstate. But once he got that taste of fame, he wanted to kind of keep it going. So then that's when he made up this stuff about Lanulose and... Or... He's nuts.
Or they made him a little bit nuts so that nobody would believe him.
Could be. That could be too. But his daughter claimed that her father told her that these creatures would always be watching over her. And she says a lot of times, like on the street or something like that, she'll see somebody that looks like one of these people. Like one of these, not with the grinning, not so much the grinning. Some people that I think, I don't remember if it was her or some other people theorized that these things, in order to appear friendly, knew that smiling is a good way to do that. Just
they
not
overdid
ear
it
to
a
ear.
little.
Yeah, they overdid it a little. So they
dial it back, boys.
Don't have an ear to ear grin because that's just freaking creepy.
It's terrifying.
Yeah. So she thinks that that's what that was that them attempting to put people at ease, which didn't really have that effect. It backfired a little bit.
Need to work on their people skills.
But she said she would see these people that looked like Indrid just watching her on the street, watching over her. She would see strange lights in the sky a lot. She sounded really credible. I mean, she kind of changed my opinion of the whole thing because I didn't know what I thought of Derenberger's account because it got kind of crazy. But she said that she remembers seeing Indrid Cold at the house talking to her father. She remembers the night that her father came home all shook up after the original sighting.
Yeah.
So she verified all this.
However, though, you're brought up in a household where that's just told to you as fact.
Yeah.
I believed in Santa Claus for a long time, too.
But she's talked to Indrid Cold.
Really?
Yeah, and she said that, the guy doing the interview on the podcast asked her what he looked like, and she just said she remembers that he looked like Mediterranean descent, like olive-colored skin. Mm-hmm. But she said he was friendly. Like the first time he talked to her, the father said, "Oh, you're actually talking to her with your voice."
Instead of telepathically?
And he said, "I didn't want to frighten her."
Oh.
So, but yeah, she says, and she sounded like she knew what she was talking about. I don't remember.
Oh, darn.
I don't remember. I can send you a link sometime.
I want to listen.
I will. John Keel kind of soured on him after the whole...
I got pregnant and moved to Brazil.
Going to Lanulose and all that, yeah. He wrote the foreword
Is it weird that I'm more annoyed with the pregnancy than the Lanulose?
He still wrote the foreword to Derenberger's book. He said that Derenberger did appear to genuinely believe in what he was saying, and he should be heard, but he kind of soured and distanced himself from Derenberger and his Indrid Cold story after that.
Okay.
Shortly after this, in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and you know what Point Pleasant is, that's where Mothman stuff happened, a family named Lily began to experience strange activity at their house, including poltergeist-like activity and strange lights in the skies over their property. Automobiles near the Lily home would stall for no reason, and kitchen cabinets and doors inside the home would slam inexplicably in the middle of the night.
That's a poltergeist.
Miss Lily said she sometimes heard a strange squealing-like sound like a baby crying throughout the inside of the home. When she would go to the location where she heard it, it would appear in where she had just come from.
Nope.
No.
Nope.
The family said, "We've seen all kinds of strange things. Blue lights, green lights, red ones, things that change color. Some have been so low that we thought we could see diamond-shaped windows in them, and none of them make any noise at all." One night, their young daughter, Linda, ran screaming into her parents' room, claiming that a man was in her bedroom. She later described him saying, It was a man, a big man, very broad. I couldn't see his face very well, but I could see that he was widely grinning at me. He walked around the bed, stood right over me. I screamed again, hid under the covers. When I looked up, he was gone. This reminds me kind of what happened to me when I was a kid. I mean, the green thing I saw in my bedroom was smiling, but it wasn't like a wide, like a shark smile. It was just like a skull face with a smile.
That's not what stood out to you.
No.
The grin.
No, but he was grinning, and it was green, but he was entirely green, not just like a shirt.
Or wearing a suit.
So I've never really associated what I saw with this. But from what Linda Lilly is saying, it sounded kind of like the same thing with the Grinning Man.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much where the Indrid Cold stuff kind of ends.
Okay.
It happened all around with the Mothman stuff, and
so I was never a big fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
It very much like the gentleman from the episode where
Hush.
That's
the name of the episode.
Yep, I was actually going to bring that up, and I totally forgot
never
about it.
watched the show, but I watched that one episode, and it scared the bejesus out of me.
Buffy
going around town like
that a lot of people said.
The chills.
A lot of people said if you can Google Buffy and then the gentleman, and you'll see pictures of what we're talking about.
I'm sure you can see it on YouTube.
A lot of people said this was that they were modeled after Indrid Cold and the Grinning Man.
They look, when you say the Grinning Man, that's what I picture.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer is one of my top 3 favorite shows ever on TV. Oh, I loved Buffy.
I never really
absolutely
watched it.
Loved it. I can't remember if it was Christmas or my birthday. My brother, it had to be super expensive, bought me a signed script.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I like David Boreanaz. Hello.
He's cool.
I actually think my husband kind of looks like David Boreanaz.
I was all about Willow.
Lucky me.
Willow was just gorgeous.
Oh, Willow, yeah.
But yeah, that's my first favorite show is MASH. Obviously, we've talked about this.
My husband loved that show too.
Second favorite show, Breaking Bad, was television perfection, and third favorite show is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think Buffy isn't. I think it's dated a little bit
now
when you watch
is.
it now.
Yeah.
But I still think it's an amazing show, and it'll probably end up getting rebooted because they're rebooting everything else under the sun.
It really. I don't want to say I watched it regularly, but I watched it enough to know that it really evolved over the years. I think it was pretty lighthearted at first, and it got really serious.
It got dark.
Towards the end. Yeah.
But the Gentleman. A lot of people associate the Gentleman. Yeah, that was a good episode.
The heebie-jeebies.
Through the years, there's been other accounts of people seeing this grinning person. I don't know if it's, like I said, I don't know what is tied in with Indrid Cold, what is tied in with was the grinning guy the kids saw the same thing as Indrid Cold? I don't know, but there's been other sightings of this grinning thing.
Yeah.
There's one from 2002 that somebody put online that said, this incident took place near Wheeling, West Virginia during the winter of 2002. I've told a few people, those I can trust, for their honest opinion. Ever since it occurred, I've been puzzled and frightened. I'm going to be specific and honest on all the details. Please don't judge me, but my girlfriend and I used to go to a local treatment center for opiate addiction and counseling.
That's such a common thing now.
I know. It's not even weird. Since starting treatment, I have remained clean, and I'm proud of that. It's been difficult, but we've gotten through it. I can honestly say that this incident I'm about to describe made breaking my dependency more difficult. Many of our appointments at the clinic were in the evening around 5 or 6 p.m. The center is about a mile off the interstate on a wooded road with a few other businesses around. It can be very dark, especially after the sun goes down. On this day, it was about 5:15 p.m. and dark, except for a few sparsely placed streetlights. It was extremely cold, and there was about an inch or so of snow on the ground. We had just driven off the interstate exit onto the wooded road when we noticed someone ahead of us on the right shoulder walking toward the rehab center. I thought it might be another patient, so I asked my girlfriend if she knew who it was and if we should give them a lift. As we approached, I slowed down to get a good look. When I got nearer, the figure stopped and turned its head and looked directly at us. What I witnessed was the most terrifying thing I have ever seen. It had dark-colored clothing and a hooded jacket of some kind. The face wasn't human. It had a huge, evil smile on its face. The smile literally went from one side of the face to the other, and the teeth were enormous but not sharp. The teeth reminded me of horses' teeth, and the overall expression was similar to the Joker from the animated Batman TV cartoon.
I'm picturing Jim Carrey, actually.
In a mask?
Yeah.
I remember my girlfriend gasped out loud, then ducked to hide her face. Needless to say, we didn't stop, but I had to get another look. I needed to figure out what it was we saw. I turned the car around at a driveway and went back. I turned around and reached the spot where we had seen it no more than 30 seconds ago, but it was gone. There was nowhere this thing could have gone. There's a high link fence between the road and the edge of the woods. On the other side of the road is a creek. This thing simply vanished. After we couldn't find it, I asked my girlfriend to describe to me what she saw. She also compared it to the Joker. We are still a couple and have talked about this experience in detail many times. I don't know what it was, but I know it wasn't human. It seemed evil. I felt it deep in my soul. I know how this comes across, but I assure you this incident is 100% true.
This reminds me of a Mothman encounter. I think that we talked about, or was it Mothman?
Was it a Shadow Man?
It might have been the Shadow Man.
Yeah, where they were driving down the street
in a truck,
and the person was like outside their window keeping up with them.
Oh, that's weird.
I know. I thought about that too.
Interesting.
But yeah, so there's been stories over the years of seeing this grinning figure, but it's nowhere near as prevalent as the Hat Man or the Shadow Man.
Yeah.
But there's bits and pieces of this. And then the last one of these is something called the Smiling Man, and this is more of a recent one. And again, a lot of these are from Reddit, so you don't know.
Right, is this made up?
You don't know if this is made up. These people swear it's true, but how much of that you can believe, I don't know. But right now, this is kind of what, when you talk about Grinning Man, this is kind of what the
quintessential
Grinning Man du jour is. Yeah. This is what.
But this is the Smiling Man.
This is the Smiling Man.
Okay.
Like I said, they're split into like three different things, kind of the same thing. This is the big story. This is the one that everybody kind of goes to when they talk about the Smiling Man. It appeared on Reddit's No Sleep subreddit, where they talk about scary stuff. And the username that said the story, his name was Blue Title. And this was posted on April 24th, 2012. He said, about 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the U.S. We later found out that it's Seattle. Okay. He did a question and answer thing, and he admitted that it's Seattle, Washington. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate went to sleep. To pass the time... Wait.
Is this the Dancing Man?
Yes.
I read this story on season 1 of Paranormal Palaver. It gives me the heebie-jeebies, and I thought that someone later on had said that he had made it up, but... A lot
of the stuff I've seen, he said that it's true.
Okay. But everybody likes to claim that people are making stuff up, so...
But yeah,
wow,
that
if
is
this
a story.
Happened, this is such a great story, and the way he tells it isn't... It's, okay, sit back, this is good.
Yeah. Yeah, this creeps me out, too. I mean...
Totally.
Yeah, we'll get into that. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like that, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommate that even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But all of that changed in just after a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police-patrolled park quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance-walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass by me. The closer he got, the more I realized how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still until I could make out his face. His eyes were open wide and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I know. That's creepy. I took my eyes off of him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back and stopped dead in my tracks. He had completely stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about half a block between us, I turned away from him for a moment to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest of moments, I felt relieved until I noticed him. He had crossed the street and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure the distance. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had to move fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time staring at him, and then he started moving toward me again. He took giant, exaggerated tiptoed steps as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone, except he was moving very, very quickly.
Nope.
I'd like to say at this point I ran away or pulled out my pepper spray or my cell phone or anything at all, but I didn't. I just stood there completely frozen as the smiling man crept towards me. And then he stopped again about a car length away from me, still smiling his smile, still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. What I meant to ask was, "What the hell do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. What came out was more of a whimper. Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. He didn't react to it all. He just stood there smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around very slowly and started dance walking away, just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off the side road and back on a better lit road with sparse traffic. Looking behind me, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that has always haunted me. He didn't look drunk, he didn't look high, he looked completely and utterly insane, and that's a very, very scary thing to see.
If that story's not true, that's some really good storytelling.
Yeah, he swears that it's true. I mean, maybe I'm gonna have to look more, but everything I saw, I mean, he did question and answer sessions. There was a whole Reddit subgroup devoted to him where he would talk about this.
Wow, because I came across the same story and I read it on Paranormal Palaver, and I loved it. I mean, that's a great story right there.
Like
you can picture every part of that, and it's terrifying.
Somebody made a film. Have you seen the film?
No.
I'll post that. I'll post it on the Strangers page, and I'll post it on the Strange Sessions page.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like the current version of the Grinning Man. That's the Smiling Man.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, that's the story that everybody goes to. And there are 2 more that I found.
Oh, sweet.
Both kind of based on this one.
Okay.
Another story. I didn't get the guy's name. He said, "So I did a little research into Blue Title's history, and it turns out he did a sort of Ask Me Anything about the Smiling Man. In the top comment reply explained that this happened in Seattle. I relayed this information to my husband. He looked me dead in the eye and told me a story. The husband told her, a few years ago at about 1:30 in the morning, I was walking up the trail from the lighthouse at Discovery Park, which is a huge nature park in downtown Seattle. Eventually, I got to the top, and there was a clearing I stopped in because it had been pitch black on the way up, and I needed a break from the darkness. I decided to move off the trail a ways to wait for people I was meeting up with, and while I was standing there, a dude was walking by normally with his dog. It seemed like they didn't notice me, and they continued down the trail I had just come from. At the time, I was thinking how weird it was that someone would descend that trail without a light. I watched the opening at the top of the trail for a few minutes, and I turned to continue my path. Through the other opening in the clearing, a guy came literally hopping out of the trees. He was tall and skinny, and skipping and flailing his arms enthusiastically with each stride. He had the same look on his face as he skipped past me, following where the man and the dog had gone. The way he was skipping was so not normal. It freaked me out, and after watching for a few more minutes to make sure he wasn't coming back, I walked off to meet my friends." So that's very similar to the
really
dancing guy.
Weird, though.
Yeah.
What strikes me about both stories is that their movements and expressions are super exaggerated.
Yep. And then there's one more. Another person in this group said, "This may or may not have been a legitimate sighting of the Smiling Man. I'm still unsure about it myself, but it gave me the chills. It happened in the early morning hours around 2 a.m. in Tucson, Arizona. I was up listening to music and working on a project for class. Nothing special in particular. My stomach started to growl, so I figured I would go to the Jack in the Box restaurant near my apartment complex. I got in my car, drove to the restaurant, and they told me that the computer system was being repaired and that they were closed. There were other fast food places down the road, so I'd go find another open one. I'd leave the parking lot, and standing across the intersection of the road, I notice a man with a dark suit and what looked like a bowler hat in his hand staring up at the sky. It creeped me out, but 15 seconds later, I was driving past him towards the next block. I get my food at McDonald's and start to head back down the road to my apartment. I notice a figure moving out of the shadows on the sidewalk and the streetlights glow. It's the same man, striding with some sort of cartoon swagger, his legs kicking out in front of him in exaggerated steps that matched the swing of his arms. His head was tilted looking up, and his face twisted into a grin that reminded me of the comic book Joker. Normally, I would have shaken this off as just some creep, but the smile this guy had nauseates me. It was like his mouth was being stretched with hooks. And he could not have walked from that first intersection to this one in the 10 minutes it took me to get my food. Maybe I'm just paranoid or my sleep-deprived mind was screwing with me. Maybe it was just a happy guy out for a stroll. Either way, I don't think I'll be leaving my apartment around that time anymore.
What would you do?
I would freak out. There's something about weird movements.
Yes,
like
the herky-jerky walk.
Like the herky-jerky ghost walk.
And what we're talking about is if you've ever seen House on Haunted Hill.
House on Hill. Yeah, I think it was in Blair Witch 2, which was a horrible movie.
Yeah. Have you seen the new Blair Witch
no,
yet?
I still haven't seen it.
It's really good.
But
There's no herky-jerky walk in that.
Anytime like something does that jerky walk.
Weird, disjointed, like...
Yeah. That just
slightly too fast. Yeah.
That just creeps the hell out of me.
Yeah. So because it's not natural.
So there's a lot of these stories, and it's like, are these people just making stuff up? I mean, these people swear it's true. And are people
these all on Reddit?
They were on Reddit. Some were on other sites.
Okay.
But, is it kind of like creepypasta, like Slender Man, where people are just
adding to a story they've already read?
Is it something where people, like some people theorize with Slender Man and stuff like that, that if enough people believe it exists, that it starts to exist?
What is that?
The Philip experiment, yeah. where paranormal researchers like created a ghost, and they came up with like a really
detailed history,
and they actually got results that like their minds created this thing.
The guys on Mysterious Universe also participated in a Philip experiment like that, and they said, I mean, it was crazy. Tables were moving and stuff was flying around the room.
Yeah, which could show that maybe paranormal experiences are like
terrifying.
A telekinesis.
If you could take something that's totally made up, and if enough people believe in it, it becomes real. Yeah. That's a terrifying thought.
And that's, there's some people that think that that's what the news does to us because it's so negative that it depresses us so much that we causes
more violence. Yeah.
So yeah, there's you can find a lot of stories about the smiling man, and he's usually has that weird walk or like the dance step.
That's creepy.
Yeah. So there's that. So
that's kind of how I feel about the Black-Eyed Kids too, though. I mean, I feel like all the stories are really, really similar, and it's one of those things where you feel like you need to see it yourself in order to believe it. But I sure as hell don't want to see a Black-Eyed Kid.
Yeah, no.
Or Grinning Man.
No.
Or Mothman.
I'd rather see the Black-Eyed Kids than the Grinning Man.
Yeah, I feel like all you gotta do is shut the door and they'll go away.
A lot of the stuff I read said that if you start to research Indrid Cold, you're gonna start getting weird phone calls.
It's the same thing with the Black-Eyed Kids.
Yeah, you're gonna start. So I don't know if we talked about this. I have a weird.
I'm gonna prank call you.
I have a weird phone thing. Like there's something about.
Yeah, you do. Yeah,
not so much cell phones, but it was landlines. Like landline, when you're talking to somebody, the other person hangs up, and you're there with that empty line.
That freaks you out.
There's something about that freaks me out. I don't know if it's something tied up with. Yeah, like I don't know if that's something tied up from my childhood or what that is, but I just always had a weird sort of phone phobia.
Well, it's a strange thing to think about because if you did hear something strange, where is it coming from?
Yeah,
is it within your house? Is it somewhere in the stratosphere? Don't know. The unknown is kind of scary.
But looking into the Indrid Cold stuff, hopefully I don't start getting weird phone calls.
Yeah, let me know if that happens.
You can text me. Text me if you want, but don't.
Kurt's not big on talking
on the phone. I'm not big on talking on the
phone. That's funny.
So theories. I don't know what to really call these things, so I just Indrid Cold. Yeah. Indrid Cold, smiling men, grinning men. Theory number 1, these things are aliens / time travelers.
I just don't buy that for some reason.
I don't either. I don't know why.
It's so different from every other description of what an extraterrestrial is supposed to look like.
Yeah, and I mean, then do you think that this Derenberger went to their planet Lanulos?
And then got pregnant and moved to Brazil?
Yeah.
No.
Hey, if they're mostly, I think he was describing them as nearly nude except for tiny shorts.
Really colorful shorts and decaf coffee. It's the decaf coffee that pushes me over the edge. I'm sorry.
But then he saw a craft. He said that this Indrid Cold came off this craft.
Yeah.
So his wife is convinced that they were time travelers. And he said, Derenberger himself said that he suspected they could be time travelers.
Coming back in time.
Yeah. A lot of this stuff, if any of our listeners ever watched Fringe, a lot of this stuff sounds like the observers from Fringe.
Well, and they were just like kind of like the Men in Black, too.
Yeah, they were kind of like the Men in Black, too.
That's one of those shows that I watched all of it except the last season.
Seriously?
Yeah.
You didn't watch the last episode?
No.
The last episode was good.
I didn't watch the last season of Lost. I didn't watch the last season of Oz. Sopranos. I have a little bit of a theme going here. I watch shows and I never finish them. Well, now it's too late. I'm not going to watch The Sopranos now because I already know what happens.
Yeah. But yeah, Derenberger said that he thought that they were time travelers.
Okay. I don't know about that.
I'm looking for his quote here. Yeah, he said they are time travelers from the fourth dimension. One reason they can't stay here too long at a time is because they get younger here instead of older. Their lifespan is 125 to 175 years, but if they stayed here too long, they would go back in years and possibly forget how to manipulate their spacecraft.
It's a Benjamin Button situation?
Kind of.
Okay.
So he said, he kind of flip-flopped between alien and time traveler.
Sense.
No. So, but this other supposed grinning men, the smiley man, are they aliens?
I feel like those are more believable.
Yeah.
I feel like it would be some kind of, I don't want to say demon.
That's another one of the theories.
But I don't think it's an extraterrestrial or a time traveler.
Yeah.
To me, if these things are real, it's more somewhere along the lines of demonic or, something like that.
That is theory number 2, that these things are demonic.
Okay.
Are demonic in nature. Like the poltergeist-like activity at the house, the phone stuff. It's just, are they demonic? I don't know. Theory number 3 says that...
Well, going back to that real quick. I feel like there are a lot of other really common things that come along with the presence of demons.
Yeah.
And none of those things are really happening in these stories. These are just chance encounters that happen once. I don't think people really... I think if you're going to see or encounter a demon, it's going to be an ongoing thing and you're going to be dealing with some stuff.
Yes.
That doesn't seem right either.
Theory number 2 was that Indrid Cold was a man in black.
Is this theory number 3?
Theory number 3 was that Indrid Cold was a man in black.
Okay.
We kind of talked about that. And it's possible, but,
if Men in Black are real. Although there have been sightings.
There have been a lot of sightings of Men in Black.
Yeah.
There was that one YouTube video from not that long ago where they had the footage of what they said were Men in Black walking into a building. Yeah.
And their faces were scrambled out or something like that?
I don't remember their faces.
Joe talked
It looked
about
like guys in suits walking into a building.
But you couldn't see their faces. I think that was part of it.
I don't remember.
And that's like an effect that they have on, you can never capture their faces. That's what I've heard.
I don't know.
Me either.
But that's one of the theories.
Okay.
Another theory, Indrid Cold and Mothman are one and the same creature.
So how come all these other sightings, though, there are no wings or glowing red eyes?
I don't know. The actual stuff that's associated as Indrid Cold all took place during the Mothman stuff. We still want to get Tobias on the show. I'd like to talk to Tobias because it seems like...
Let's do a season 2 with Tobias.
Yes, it seems like the Mothman stuff is something that if you want to get into it, you've got to completely dive into it. And there's so much there that you have to devote yourself to it.
Yeah, it's not something you can just sort of touch on now and then.
No.
You have to really dig in.
And it's weird when I listen to older podcasts that say, well, how come the Mothman stuff never came back? When now it recently has in Chicago.
It's strange.
Is it on a 50-year cycle or something like that? The Creature in It? Because the Creature in It was on a 20-something year cycle where it would come back.
That's right. I forgot about that.
So is that what Mothman is? Have there been any reports of an Indrid Cold person in Chicago tied in with these?
Good question.
Yeah, I don't know. But Indrid Cold himself.
Google Indrid Cold, Chicago. I suppose people nowadays, unless you're familiar, though, with who that is, they wouldn't make that connection.
No. But yeah, a lot of people think that Indrid Cold and Mothman might be the same creature. I don't know if I buy that. And the last theory, number 5, all this is just a story or a weird mixture of things that, like, weird things that happened that got embellished.
Sensationalized.
Yeah, sensationalized and embellished.
Could be.
And I don't know, so much of this stuff comes from John Keel. And a lot of people are real iffy about John Keel, but
Is he still around?
I think he's passed away.
Okay.
But there's enough people that can kind of corroborate the Mothman stuff.
Right.
So, I think it's got to be one of those things that's either...
Maybe there's an ounce of truth to it. We just don't know what it is.
Yeah. The Mothman stuff seems like that actually happened, but the only stuff we really have for Indrid Cold came from Keel and from Derenberger. But his wife corroborated what happened.
And their daughter.
So, I mean, if you're hoaxing that's kind of a long time to carry on a hoax.
Right. Were they profiting from it somehow?
Not that I know of.
The daughter wrote a book.
Well, they wrote books, but
they probably weren't national bestsellers.
No. So I don't know. Some of the Smiling Man stuff I could see just being like a creepypasta type story.
It was a good one.
It was a good one.
Dancing Man one is probably one of my favorite things I've ever come across.
But yeah, they had a whole subreddit devoted to that, and a lot of people were writing. A lot of them were the same thing, that they'd see this creepy guy smiling at them that would just have this huge smile that was just
too big,
inhuman. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know what I think. I think that...
I don't know. I feel like it's just the stuff of urban legends,
Yeah.
But it's fun to talk about right before
Halloween. It is fun
Halloween.
to talk about right before Halloween.
Who knows? Maybe these people did encounter something scary and strange, and I don't know.
It has to be frustrating when you do encounter something like that and people
Nobody
don't believe
believes
you.
Yeah. Sorry. I just have to see something for myself.
I don't want to see the dancing guy.
Are you kidding me?
I really don't.
I can't run very fast, so I don't know what I would do if I encountered something like that when I was by myself. But I'm also one of those people who doesn't go in the woods or walking around at 2:00 in the morning by myself either.
No.
I listen to too many true crime podcasts to do that.
Exactly.
I don't want to be a statistic.
So that's the story of the Grinning Man / Indrid Cold / Smiling Man.
Creepy.
If any of our listeners have had run-ins with any of these creatures, please let us know.
Yeah, and why are you just telling us about it now?
Exactly.
Maybe save
Should
it
have brought
for
this up a while ago.
Save it for the season finale. That'd be a good story to tell. Cool.
So that's that. Listeners, what do you think of the Grinning Man, Indrid Cold, or the Smiling Man? Do you think any of this is true? Do you think there's anything behind this?
Yeah, I want to know what you guys think.
Let us know what you guys think. We will be back in 2 weeks with our 14th episode.
Yep.
We are going to do the year in... What should we call it?
I don't know.
The weird year in review?
Yeah. The strange year in review.
Yeah, the strange...
2017 strange.
2017.
We'll work on it.
We'll figure something out. We got 2 weeks. We're smart. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. We'll Google it.
So get back to us. Let us know what you think. Leave us comments on YouTube or on Facebook.
Subscribe.
Join our The Strangers closed group where you can talk about this stuff and not look like you're nuttier than squirrel poop.
I've never heard that before. And rate us. Please rate us. And if you can rate us on iTunes, that'd be awesome.
I'm afraid to look at our iTunes rating.
No, I don't even know how to get there.
Mora incident.
I don't even know how to get there, I'll be honest
we're probably like a -5 or something like that.
We just need to let it go and move on.
Like I said, when we get her on the podcast, that will redeem us.
Oh, yeah.
And she'll fall in love with me, and we'll have like a million babies.
The funny thing is, though, we're all picturing the Maura Murray that went missing however many years ago. She doesn't look like that.
No, she doesn't.
I mean, just because we look like we're in our 20s doesn't mean everybody else does when they're in their 40s.
Yeah, that's very true.
Mm-hmm. That age progression picture of her, I was like, no, that's not who I've been picturing.
I think she probably looks like her sister Julie, because
maybe
that's kind of what I think.
Yeah, she could.
But yeah, we'll have to. I'm sure in the next episode we'll discuss the finale.
Is that the final episode? Is this weekend?
Yes, I believe that's the 6th. So we'll discuss that in our year in the year in Strange review. We'll figure
the weird year in review. I don't know.
We'll figure something out.
We'll come up with something.
So until next time,
Stay strange.